it's really hard to give other people what you don't have for yourself. And so I had a really hard time connecting with people. I had a hard time even knowing who I really am, what my values are, what do I want to do with my life? Because I thought that if I look a certain way, like my entire life revolved around if I can look a certain way and if I can be perfect around food and perfect around exercise, that I'm finally going to feel like I'm enough.
Welcome to the Be It Till You See It podcast, where we talk about taking messy action, knowing that perfect is boring. I'm Lesley Logan, Pilates instructor and fitness business coach. I've trained thousands of people around the world, and the number one thing I see stopping people from achieving anything is self-doubt. My friends, action brings clarity, and it's the antidote to fear. Each week, my guests will bring bold, executable, intrinsic, and targeted steps that you can use to put yourself first and be it till you see it. It's a practice, not a perfect. Let's get started. Hello, Be It Babe. Welcome back to another interview for the Be It Till You See It podcast. I'm just loving, I get to talk to so many amazing people because you listen to this podcast. So I just want to say thanks because it's really fun for me. I'm assuming it's fun for you because you're listening. Today, our guest is Sabrina Magnan, and she is so fun. We have a really great conversation that kind of goes through how she got to doing what she's doing, which is like focusing on helping others with emotional eating. But also, we talk about manifesting and like how she manifested the person she's with now and what she's manifesting next. And so it's just a really fun conversation that I think we can all resonate with in different aspects. And also, if emotional eating is something that you are understanding about yourself, I do think that there's going to be some really great points in here that help you feel like you're not alone. And if you're not, then get all the manifestation out of this episode that you want. Here is Sabrina. All right, Be It Babe. This is going to be fun because I'm just going to come out from the gate. Sabrina, I've already talked today. So if you hear us talk about, like we were talking about this morning, it's just because I was already on her podcast. So Sabrina Magnan is our guest today. She is an incredible human. And what I can't wait for us to talk about, we're going to get into some self-talk, it's that self-chatter and mindset stuff. But Sabrina, before we get into all that, can you tell everyone who you are and maybe how you started to rock and all of this stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. So thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be here. And like you said, I am Sabrina Magnan, and I'm an intuitive eating and food freedom coach for women who struggle with the relationship with food, disordered eating, binge eating, food obsession, body image, a lifetime of yo-yo dieting. And I help them heal their relationship with food and their bodies so that they can free their mental space, their energy, their time to focus on being their authentic selves and creating the life of their dreams.
Thank you for even bringing all that up. I think like the thing about being it till you see it is like acting as if you're the person that you want to be, right? And a lot of times what keeps us from being that person is the stuff that we're currently doing that's kind of holding us back. And it's really a distraction in our lives. And it can be really hard. I do want to get into real briefly, because you mentioned intuitive eating. I feel like people that requires having intuition. So for someone who might not know what that is, can we just kind of go over that briefly?
Yeah, absolutely. So in the simplest terms, it's the way that we are all born to eat. So if you think about toddlers, they eat when they're hungry, they stop when they're full, they turn their head, they push their plate, they turn away from the boob when they've had enough food. And as we get older and we get all these messages around what we should or shouldn't be eating and how it might affect our weight, and we get all of this fear around food, then that can really start to disconnect us from our bodies. And so we're no longer listening to what our bodies are telling us. We're listening to what other people tell us that we should be doing. We start calorie counting or restricting or not eating when we're hungry and then overeating later. So being an intuitive eater is blending what your body is telling you along with your emotions and your rational thought.
I love that. And also like, yeah, when we're kids, we do that already, I was telling somebody that like I started just shortening the window. Like I was following like Mindy Pell's and kind of shortening the window. And I said, I'm dabbling. Like I'm dabbling in it. Like this is not I cannot follow anything like to a T. I'm just going to dabble in it. And she was like, what's so funny is like our kids go 12 hours. Like they eat dinner at 7 and we don't feed on breakfast till 7. So like why as an adult is it so hard? And it's because like life and all these things, and we get all these mixed messages, and it can be really crazy. And then there's, the chatter in between, all the different things we say that are sometimes from us and sometimes from other people. Like, what's your experience with self-talk and like the things that we say and how that affects us from intuitive eating or just like having like a healthy relationship with ourselves and body image?
Yeah. So I think a good way to lead into that conversation is how I got to where I am today.
Yeah, let's go.
Because I was a high level synchronized swimmer when I was younger. So
were you like the girls? I also saw that we're getting off topic, but I just recently saw during the Olympics how you get your hair to like,
yeah.
It's like weird. It's like plastic. It's like weird rubber stuff to get. So your hair still looks like hair, but it also is like, anyways, go ahead.
It's terrible. It's really like, it's that gelatin mix that you make food with, and you mix it in with like boiling hot water, and you put that into your hair. And it is a absolute pain to take out of your hair. It takes hours. So I was a synchronized swimmer for 8 years of my life. And it's a sport that is very highly focused on the way that you look. So you saw the Olympics, they all kind of look the same. Tall, skinny, long legs, and you just inevitably start to compare yourself to others. And there's a lot of, there's girls who don't make certain teams because of the way their bodies look, regardless of their talent level. And so I was never in a quote unquote bigger body, but I always thought that I was too big. Like, I have some nice muscular thighs, and I didn't have a thigh gap, and I didn't have a six pack. And so when I retired from the sport at the age of 16, I thought that the worst thing that you could possibly do is to gain weight, because in my world, gaining weight meant you were less worthy, you were less valuable. And so I did what anyone else would do as a 16-year-old. I started looking online and what can I cut out and what should I be doing? So counting calories and low carb and 1,200 calories. And I look back on that time now, and the way that I treated myself and the way that I spoke to myself was so incredibly abusive and negative. And as a result, we talked about it this morning, it's really hard to give other people what you don't have for yourself. And so I had a really hard time connecting with people. I had a hard time even knowing who I really am, what my values are, what do I want to do with my life? Because I thought that if I look a certain way, like my entire life revolved around if I can look a certain way and if I can be perfect around food and perfect around exercise, then I'm finally going to feel like I'm enough. I'm finally going to feel like I am worthy and I'm going to feel confident. And as you know, like that's an internal job. And so I thought that if something outside of me changed, then I would feel different internally. And then I remember waking up one day where I was at the deepest, darkest part of my eating disorder and just thinking, what am I all doing this for? Like I started this because I thought that it would make me feel happy and confident and loved and accepted and healthy. And I am getting further and further and further away from those things. So into that conversation of be it till you see it, I really thought about my future. And I thought about the kind of person, the kind of life that I wanted to live. And I always said, I want to travel. I want to be spontaneous. I want to have adventures. And with my rigid thinking around food, around exercise, around myself, none of that would be possible if I didn't make a radical change in how I operated internally.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Like, if you went through your life and you never had your, like the idea of like, oh, once I'm this, then I'll have that. Like, congratulations, what a life you've lived. But most of us, like I resonate with that so much. We just get really obsessed. Like, oh, as soon as I get there to this 5 pounds that no one notices on me, and that probably is very helpful for me, then I'll be happy. And it really, you're so miserable getting there that you can't even enjoy it once you are there. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah.
So you go on this journey, and and you're recognizing like who you want to be and then how you are not that person. How does that, like, what did that take you to next? You know, where's the next step?
So that was really my rock bottom. And at that time in my life, I had the opportunity to go to Italy for the summer to be an au pair. And that had always been my dream. Like Italy was my dream country. And I noticed that I didn't want to go. I was anxious about going because I didn't want to gain weight. And I was terrified of being around carbs and pasta and all these foods that I couldn't control myself around. And I noticed that this like anxiety that I was feeling was really holding me back at the age of 21. So what would that look like at the age of 30 and 40 and 50? So I was extremely terrified, and I knew that's why I needed to go. I was so uncomfortable, and that's why I needed to do it. So I went to Italy that summer, and the first thing that the Italian nonna who I lived with said when she saw me was, "Oh my God, you're so skinny. Let's get you some food." And immediately,
you're like, "Oh my God, this is like what I thought."
Oh my God, I've made a huge mistake. I've made a huge mistake. And I was really challenged that summer. But at the same time, I was forced to see a different perspective on what it's like to have a healthy relationship with food. Because in Italy, they don't talk about calories. They're not counting their points. They're not spending 2 hours at the gym. It's a culture of let's enjoy food, right? Let's nourish ourselves. Let's connect through it. Let's slow down. Let's be mindful. Let's be present, which is something I was never used to. I really saw like a stark contrast between the way that I was living back home, where everything was about being productive and doing the right thing. Whereas here it was, let's slow things down and let's actually be present and intentional with what we do. And that like planted a seed of, oh, there's a different way to live a healthy and a happy lifestyle that doesn't go to those extremes. We talked about this morning how I'm a recovering perfectionist, very high standards. And so I really thought that if I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it perfect. I'm going to do it well. And I did that with quote unquote clean eating. And so in that summer, I saw it's actually possible to like have gelato and have bread and have these foods and still feel really good. Feel good physically, feel good mentally, feel good emotionally. I felt even better because I was nourishing myself. So I came home that summer and I really made a decision of I'm not going to fall back into what I was doing before, because now I'm back in my environment. I'm back around the same people, the same places. It would be so easy to just get caught up back into that cycle of disordered eating. And it took a few years. It took a few years of like peeling back the layers, because all of these things that we do, they don't happen in a vacuum. They're all connected. And so I had to unravel like, okay, what are the thoughts that I have around my body? What are the thoughts that I have around the people around me? Like I had this identity as the healthy friend. I thought that people only loved me because I was so disciplined and because I was so healthy, which
that's hilarious, Sabrina. There's not a single person out there who goes, you know what? I want to hang out with that really disciplined friend.
I know. Like, if anything, it made me more unbearable to be around.
No, let's not invite Sabrina. She won't eat that anyway. Like, that's what it is. Like that, you know, but I understand because I was a person with like severe stomach issues. And I was like, I'm an annoying friend to hang around. Like, nobody wants to hang around me. So let me just like figure this out. But it is funny. Like, you're like, this is how I'm known though. No, people know me as the healthy one. I got to be the healthy one. The titles we give ourselves really hold us back.
Yeah. And we develop these beliefs because they served a purpose at some point in your life. And I come from a overachieving family where my dad, you know, never said, I love you. He's a phenomenal dad, but he is a boomer dad who never learned to communicate his emotions or how he feels. And we never had any of these kind of conversations. So I always felt like in order to get love and to get attention, because I was the youngest of 5 kids, I just need to excel. I need to achieve. And so if I'm excelling, if I'm overachieving, then maybe I'll get noticed. And so when I was, working out and losing weight and doing all these things, I felt like I was getting noticed. And so I took that on as an identity of, okay, if you are that, then you are loved, you are accepted. And so even if I, look back on it now and I wasn't feeling any of those things, it happened so subconsciously.
Yeah. Yeah. It really does. It's, like it just starts to, you don't even realize it's happening because it just starts to get warmer and warmer and warmer. And, you like learn to tolerate it. So I think it's what I also am hearing is like the awareness, the self-awareness you have is really amazing. I don't know that a lot of people have that self-awareness, at least at that age. But how cool to be in Italy. Like I have not been. I need to go. I know you guys.
You're missing out.
I'm missing out. But y'all, most of you haven't been to Southeast Asia. So I don't
That's true.
So I'll get to the places everyone's been to, eventually. But I've only heard good things. And as someone who can't tolerate gluten, I've also heard I could there. So I'm like, you have no idea. Like I am ready. But I think to go back into like navigating like some of our self-talk, it takes a lot of awareness. Like how did you, even as you said, like I started to look at what my self-talk was like, what does that look like? So as the recovering perfectionist overachiever, I'm like, okay, did you have a journal? Did you like, oh, I've had a thought. Did you write it down? How do you evaluate this? How do you become aware of what your self-talk is?
Yeah. So I actually didn't journal until probably around 5 to 6 years ago. And so there was that Italy period. And then I came back and there was about 2 years of like really like messiness where I was trying to figure things out and I was still kind of going back and forth. And then the pandemic hit and I was in France at the time. I was living in France and I come back to live at my parents' house because there's so much going on. And I remember I had to do 2 weeks of quarantine because I was coming back from Europe. And those 2 weeks, when I got back from Europe, I was really, really shaken up because living in Europe during the beginning of the pandemic was extremely, extremely scary. And I spent those 2 weeks so angry at the world, angry at my parents, which they were being so lovely, letting me come back to live with them, angry at myself, just like pure anger. And I remember there was a Dean Graziosi like ad that popped up on my computer, and it was like a 2-week happiness challenge. Now at that point, I was like, I had never done personal development before. I had never worked on myself before, and I said, what do I have to lose? And so some of it was like these small action items every day, and they were things that I had never done before that made me extremely uncomfortable, like sending a gratitude message to 5 people in my life. And at the time, I really took this on from my dad. I held everyone at arm's length. I wasn't vulnerable. I wasn't myself. I didn't know who I was. I always just had a wall because it was a way to protect myself. So I was like, I'm going to go all in and I'm just going to dedicate myself to doing this because I feel horrible right now. And
so you're alone for 2 weeks. What else do you have to do? Like you're
exactly.
Just,
what
like
else? I have nothing to lose.
It could go really fast or it could go real slow. So
yeah. So I took out my journal and I started doing the gratitudes and, thinking about positive things about myself. And what I noticed is this actually feels really good. It feels good to take these small actions. One of them was I started hugging my parents every morning. We don't do physical touch in my family. And so when I told them like, hey, I'm going to do something for the next month where I'm going to hug you every morning, they were like, okay. And they started loving it. And so we got so close during that time. And it was through these small little steps that it was like kind of using like a hammer and just getting closer and closer to understanding who am I at my core? Like without all of these learned programs and these things that I've put up in my life in order to protect myself, like who am I actually? And when I thought about kind of letting go of this identity of the person who's always complaining, very negative, a lot of self-deprecating humor. It made me really uncomfortable to think about becoming a person who is happy and genuine and positive. And when I noticed, like, why am I feeling so uncomfortable at the thought of becoming a like better, happier version of myself? That goes back to the same thing that happened in Italy. If this is making you uncomfortable, it means that you should go after it.
I like that. I think that's really cool. I think that's like, I think we were talking about this morning. You guys, it's been a day. But yeah, like it's like just, getting comfortable with discomfort and sometimes discomfort is unfamiliar, but it's also like, oh, I kind of like this. I kind of like, I'm sure those first hugs with your family were weird and
so weird,
slightly uncomfortable. And you could have just like, okay, I'm not going to do it tomorrow. It was too weird. But you kind of are like, yeah, but this could make me feel really good. Like I'm going to try that again, So I think that's really cool. So what a life being in France. We were in Cambodia at the start of the pandemic. We came back, nothing had shut down. Actually, as we flew in, LA shut down. So thank goodness for a dog sitter, and she went grocery shopping for us while we were flying. And I was like, can you please make sure there's food? Like we're coming back to, it's shut down. Like, what are we doing? So, but we didn't have to, we quarantined together in our own home. So I understand like there's so much uncertainty. You're coming back and then it's like, what am I even doing here? I can understand being angry. Like you obviously living in France for a reason. Like sounds amazing. How did all of this help like did you change your life in a different way? Did you start manifesting? Like what came next? Because my goodness, it feels like a lot has happened in a short period of time, but also like 4 or 5 years. So it's also like not a long period of time, but decent amount of time.
Yeah. So really what I started doing that year is instead of letting life just happen to me, right? Like be a victim of my consequences and just like have all these things come into my life and just be like, I guess like things just happen to you, like bad things happen. I started getting intentional about, okay, what do I want to create? And I really started looking at my life as like a book and just scripting like, okay, what do I want my life to look like? And so I would write it in the present moment and I would just be like, I'm dating this person, I'm living here, I'm doing this with my business. And I would write them and I would get my emotions involved. And I would also think like, how do I want to feel about myself? Because you have to be intentional about the person you want to become. Because if you don't, you're just going to keep repeating the same person that you were yesterday. I think science shows that like 80% of your thoughts are the same as the ones that you had yesterday.
I know. And I still want to know how they figured that out, but I believe it. I mean, like, it's true. But also, like, who sat down and did that?
How? How did you count how many thoughts that we have?
Also, we have like 60,000 thoughts or something ridiculous. We have a lot of thoughts.
Yeah.
And 80% of them are repetitive. Yes.
Yeah. And the vast majority of them are negative because you're constantly looking out for threats. Like we have a negativity bias. And so I really got curious as to like, okay, if I could literally have a magic wand and create the life that I want, free of limitations, free of what I think is possible, what would that look like? And so I would just write that down every day and I would start to live into it. And at the time I had no experience with like manifesting and getting intentional. And what I started noticing is like, oh, these things are actually starting to come into my life and I'm getting more good things. And I would get evidence that this is possible for you. It's not just something that you're writing down in your journal. Like you're writing them down and then you're being intentional about taking those actions. Like it's not just saying, I want a red car and then just crossing your fingers that a red car is going to come into your life. I remember about like 2 or 3 years in, I decided, okay, I'm ready to meet my person. I wasn't in a rush to do it. I wasn't like desperate to do it. I actually really liked being single. But every time that I would date someone and, things wouldn't work out, after that, what I would do is I would write down what was it that I liked about them? what did I feel was missing, and what exactly do I want the next person to be like? And most importantly, like, how do I want to feel with them? It wasn't like they need to have this job and make this amount of money, but it was like, I remember one of the big things is I want to feel like a priority. I want to feel like you feel special to be with me. And I think I dated 2 or 3 people before I met my now partner. And I have the paper that I wrote down after the guy that I dated right before Luke. And it's like, it's insane. It's spot on of like, this is exactly who I'm dating now.
Yeah. Yeah. I actually really I like the way you did it. It's like, it's not about, okay, they have to make this much money and they need to be 6 feet tall and they have to be emotionally available and all this stuff that like, it's like, how do I want to feel in this relationship? You know,
Mhm.
how do I want to be treated? Like, how is this? And then that way your brain is actually seeking out, like knows what to look for. You know, you're like spotting, you're like, oh, that's that thing. I wanted that. It's right there.
Yeah.
That's really cool. Okay. We have had manifest people, like taught people about manifestation on the podcast before, but everyone has like a different way of doing it. So even if it's like new to you, like what are some of the ways that you've manifested? What else have you manifested? Because I think some people think, oh, manifesting is like the secret. I just proclaim it and it comes. I believe it takes action. It sounds like you do too, because you took some action. So what are some of your other ways of manifesting things?
Yeah, great question. So I would say that one of the biggest things is just get clear on what you want and to start putting your energy towards it. So, for example, Luke and I are manifesting a dog for spring of 2025. And we don't know if we're going to be able to have a dog in our current apartment. And so we just keep acting as if it's already happened. And that's the biggest thing I would say is act as if you already have it. Be the person who already has it. So there's a lot of goals that I'm manifesting in my business, for example. And a lot of people think, okay, once I hit that goal, then I will feel this, this, this. Then I will be this, this, this. But it's so backwards because first you have to be that person. You have to match the frequency of the thing that you want to achieve. So I think, okay, a person who has this revenue goal, this amount of clients, how do they act on a daily basis? What are they doing in their business? Because this is going to help me get clarity on, okay, is that person still taking care of these actions in their business? No, they're delegating. So let me start delegating, making space for it now, and start taking those actions to make myself ready to receive those goals.
Yes. Yes. That's be it till you see it right there, everyone. That's how you do it. You have to like, you can't like, oh, once I get the promotion, then I'll be a kinder boss or a better leader. No, you have to be you have to act like the better leader now. What would a better leader do? You can't be like, once I do this, then I'll have this. Or once I get a day off, then I'll take time for myself. No, take time for yourself each day, even if it's 5 minutes. Like you won't know what to do with yourself. It will feel very unfamiliar and it will feel very uneasy and it won't give you the confidence you need if you wait. You know, you'll feel like an imposter for sure.
And the brain that you have leading up to that goal is going to be the exact same brain that you have when you have that goal. It's not just going to switch overnight like, ooh, now I think differently and now I act differently. Like everything, all of my problems have been solved.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true. What are your favorite ways to kind of like help your brain be comfortable with some of these changes you make? Because I think that's the hardest thing. Like your brain is like, this feels unsafe. This isn't safe for me to do it that way. I want to do it this way. That isn't helping me, but it's comfortable.
Oh my God, that's such a good question. Because right now I'm like stepping into a new timeline, stepping into new goals. And I did notice that, and I was talking to my coach about it. When I think about the goal, logically, I'm like, it's possible. I want it. But when I noticed and I tapped into my body, I was like, there's some resistance here. And I think that a lot of people actually experience that. They say that they want a goal, but if they actually tap into what's going on in their nervous system and what's going on in there's a disconnect there. And if there's a disconnect, it means that something subconsciously or some things, multiple things, don't feel safe around that goal, don't feel safe around chasing that thing. So when I really sat down with it, what I'll typically do is I'll just ask my heart, like, all right, where are you feeling a block? Like, what feels unsafe about this? And then I'll write it down. And what I'll often notice is that it's not just one thing. Like, there's multiple things that come into play. I remember a few years ago, I thought if I make more money, then my friends they're not gonna be around me. Like, my family's not gonna want to be around me, which is, it's not necessarily a belief that's based in truth, but we create these beliefs because it just, something about it doesn't feel safe. And so what I like to do is I like to write things down. What are all of these different things that I'm feeling resistance around? And then I start to pick at all of them. All right, is this true? What about this is true? Is it true 100% of the time? And sometimes you do need to do some nervous system regulation. Like, sometimes what I'll do is I'll say a belief out loud and I'll take a few deep breaths to make it feel safe to actually hold on to this belief. To really, like, the biggest thing is, like, I get my body involved, because most of the time my brain's on board, right? Like, most of the time people are like, I have these goals, I have these ambitions. Your brain is on board, but your nervous system is not necessarily feeling safe around it.
Yes, yes, yes. I think so. I agree with that. And I think that's really helpful. It's kind of just like asking those questions and tapping into it. And I think writing is a really good way. Even if you can't read your writing, guys like me, like just writing it out, because we tend to let more information come out. I would do morning pages, which is whenever I journal, it's going to be morning pages. It's going to be a brain dump, because you're like, whoa, I didn't even know that was in there. That was in there.
Yeah.
Oh, noted. Like, it's, how long's that been sitting there? No wonder I'm feeling anxious. So I think that's really, really important. It's really key. What are you most excited about right now besides this 2025 puppy?
Oh, I mean, that's probably at the top of my list. Honestly, if I was never a dog person until probably 2 years ago when I started dating my boyfriend. And now I am like, every day I'm like, okay, so are you ready? Are you ready to have our dog yet? So I would say my dog is up there. I've got a bunch of weddings from people that I really care about that are coming up in the next month, which I'm really excited to celebrate and love on. And I have some really awesome projects coming into my business for the next 6 months to expand, impact more people. So those are the things that I'm really looking forward to.
That's so fun. If you want a dog, like a puppy fix, a dog fix, and it will be hard. I'm not saying it's going to be easy, but one of the things that my husband and I used to do in LA is we actually used to walk dogs that were in the shelter. And because we couldn't take them, we had two already. So we were done. But I would just see all these dogs up for adoption, these puppies up for adoption. And you can literally like go take them for a walk. And when they get out, they're wearing a sign that says, I'm available to be adopted. So you're like getting them out to be adopted. You're getting your dog fix. You get to practice what it's like to like have a dog out in public and like how to handle it and all those things. But also you just take it back. And like,
Yeah.
So it was one of my favorite things. You can also read to dogs in the shelter. You can cuddle with them. So like, I highly recommend like getting cozy with one. There was one that had a vet that was next to my Pilates studio. And so they would just text me like, hey, there's a dog that's at the vet today. Can you take him out? Because the veterinarians obviously don't do that kind of stuff. And so I would go and take the dogs for a walk. That was what I did. And I just would love up on them and give them all this love and like help them like, not feel like they're in the shelter. It was so fun. And who knows, I'll probably do that again. The other thing you can like there's this one person who like is training for a marathon. So he would actually run like 20 different dogs in the shelter every day. And he'd run them for a mile-ish. And so he could get get different lengths of running in.
That's
and get the dogs
amazing.
exercise. So it's just something like you can do, obviously in the winter in Canada, no. But now when it's nice.
So here's the problem. I know that my boyfriend would never let me go because he always says, if you go to a shelter, I know that you're coming home with a puppy. Like there's no way. If they have a little sign that says open for adoption.
I promise you won't. Here's why. Your apartment won't let you. And most shelters need to see the lease that says you have you can have a dog. So they're not going to let you take the dog home. Like it is,
Okay,
I promise
fair.
you're in a safe, like they won't let you take a dog that they're afraid they're going to get back. So you will be fine.
Hilarious.
All right, we're going to take a brief break and then find out how people can find you, follow you, and work with you. All right, Sabrina, where do you like to hang out? Where can people connect more with you if what you have resonated with them?
Yeah. So if you like to listen to podcasts, which I'm sure that you do, you can head over to my podcast, which is called the Live Unrestricted Podcast, which Lesley, you're going to be a guest on, which I'm so excited about. And you can also find me on Instagram at Sabrina Magnan Health. I have a coaching program called Food Freedom Academy. So if you are struggling with your relationship with food and your body, reach out, connect. I'd love to talk to you.
I love it. That is so fun. Yes, you guys, I was interviewed on her podcast. We talk about habits and breaking them, and I think you'll really like it. So you've given us some great tips already, manifestation, like self-talk. But for those perfectionists, recovering overachievers, those people who are like, okay, what's next, Sabrina? We want some bold, executable, intrinsic, or targeted steps people can take to be it till they see it. What do you have for us?
We're talking about actionable things. So I would say, honestly, the first place to start is take out a piece of paper and have 2 different columns. And one is what I like to write, the old me. And then I'll put down the thoughts, the emotions, and the actions that I want to leave behind. And a lot of this, we've talked about self-talk. It could be the way that you talk to yourself, right? I'm such a failure. I can never stick to anything. I'm not good enough. Everyone is so much better than me. Get that down on paper and say, okay, I'm bringing my awareness to this. So every time that I notice that thought starts to pop up, I know we're not doing that anymore. And then on the second side of the paper could be the future me. And that's what you're going to replace those thoughts, those emotions, and those actions with. Because what this really does is it helps you pinpoint those things that you want to bring to your conscious awareness. Because as we said before, these things happen unconsciously. They are on autopilot. You've been practicing them so many times that you don't have to think about speaking negatively to yourself. You've gotten really, really good at it. So we need to interrupt that automatic pattern. We need to bring it up to our conscious awareness and decide we're not doing that anymore. And we are going to take the actions necessary in order to reframe into something different.
Yes, I love that. Thank you for that. What a great tip. That's a great thing to do. Guys, how are you going to use these tips in your life? Make sure you tag Sabrina, tag the Beit Pod, send this to a friend who needs to hear it. There's always that friend who has been struggling and maybe telling you I'm struggling with this, I'm struggling with just being a perfectionist or taking the next step or acting as if this resonated with you, it'll resonate with them. So send it to a friend. And until next time, be it till you see it.
That's all I've got for this episode of the Be It Till You See It podcast. One thing that would help both myself and future listeners is for you to rate the show and leave a review. And follow or subscribe for free wherever you listen to your podcast. Also, make sure to introduce yourself over at the Beit Pod on Instagram. I would love to know more about you. Share this episode with whoever you think needs to hear it. Help us and others be it till you see it. Have an awesome day.
Be It Till You See It is a production of the Bloom Podcast Network. If you want to leave us a message or a question that we might read on another episode, you can text us at +1 310 905 5534 or send a DM on Instagram at beitpod.
It's written, filmed, and recorded by your host, Lesley Logan, and me, Brad Crowell.
It is transcribed, produced, and edited by the epic team at Diseño.co.
Our theme music is by Ali at Apex Production Music, and our branding by designer and artist Gianfranco Cioffi.
Special thanks to Melissa Solomon for creating our visuals.
Also to Angelina Herrico for adding all of our content to our website. And finally, to Meredith Root for keeping us all on point and on time.